Thank you, Jesus.
Lord, you know I cannot teach this without you. These are your words,
Lord,
Lord.
bless you,
Help
God.
me to present them
Help
the
her,
way
God.
you
Use
want
it.
them to be
Let her
presented.
flow in
God,
the
I pray
anointing.
that you will bless everything that's said here this morning. I pray this in
Praise you,
Jesus'
Lord
name.
Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, we started back before with Noah, and we know after they disembarked from the ark, they were left with 8 people, only 8 people that God said to replenish the earth with. And he said replenish the earth, not just replenish this region.
Right.
So we went on to move into the Tower of Babel, where they decided that's where they wanted to stay, together, and not scatter out, as God had told them to do. So God confused their languages, and they scattered out, just like he wanted them to do. And we find that Terah, who was Abraham's father, left this area just about this time when Noah was somewhere roughly around, the commentators say, around 58 years old. Maybe that was the reason. We don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he was trying to get away from all the idol worship. The Bible doesn't tell us that he moved. He was on his way to Canaan. But he stopped in Haran because it was nice, and like we discussed last Sunday, it was a long trip, and it was like a little city moving. So that's where he settled, and he died there in Haran. And this is where we're going to start again in chapter 12, verse 1. Says, Now the Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto the land that I will show thee. He's telling Abraham again, move out. So we find that Abraham departed, once again on God's command, and he left his brother Nahor there at Haran, and all of his relatives. He took only Lot, and they began to travel. And they traveled on to the land of Hai and Bethel, and settled in the plain. And if I'm not mistaken, he traveled on into Shechem, which is just inside the land of Canaan. So he did get to Canaan. And then a famine struck. And in verse 10 it says, And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was very grievous. Now, Abraham had a wife.
Yes.
And she must have been a beauty. I would say a rare beauty. Because as they were traveling there, Abram said to his wife, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, he said unto Sarai, Behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. So, he had the faith to depart. He had the faith to do a lot of things, but maybe he might get killed because of his wife's beauty. So he's telling her, and it is a half-truth. Half-truths can get you into a lot of trouble.
Yes.
And so she did tell the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, when the princess saw Sarah, they were awed by her, so they told Pharaoh about her. Pharaoh brought her into his house, and God sent a plague, because that's not what he wanted. And I don't know how they figured it out that it was Sarah, but they calculated it somehow and came back to Sarah, found out that that Sarah was Abraham's wife. So I want you to notice too that whenever they came to get Sarah, and he had treated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen and asses and men servants and maid servants and asses and camels. Gave Abraham a lot of stuff for Sarah.
Yes.
And now he's wanting to know, why have you done this to me? Why have you lied to me? And Abraham said, like I said, he said, well, she is my sister. She is my father's daughter, but not my mother's. But he omitted some of the truth there. And the Pharaoh said, leave my country. He didn't want to have any part of Abraham after that. And then he took, let me see, go here. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him unto the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. It says a little further down here, and Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. So Lot was doing quite well all by himself. And then we see here that Abram is quite wealthy too. And as they lived together in this one area that they came to, there began to be a struggle between the herdsman of Abraham and the herdsman of Lot. They couldn't get along over the water wells. So we find that Abraham did something I think is very outstanding for this man, because he's the richest and he's the oldest. Lot's with him. He's not with Lot. Right. But it says, and Abram said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou shalt take the left hand, then I will take the right. And if thou depart to the right, then I will go to the left. In other words, he's very generous here. You take what you want, and I'll take what's left. Well, we know Lot. He looked out at the Bible says that it was that this land looked like God's garden. It was well watered. It was green. It was lush, beautiful pastures. The plain of Jordan, and it was beautiful to the eye. And that's what Lot chose. Okay. Now I want you to notice this. After, and I think the scripture kind of brings this out, after that Lot had separated himself, which is maybe what God wanted from the very beginning. After Lot had separated himself, he told Lot, lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art, northward and southward and eastward and westward. And this was the land that he was going to give to Abraham and his descendants. Now, I've read this so many times. I don't know why this thought popped in my head. I thought, well, that's a good thing Lot chose that other one, because then what would have happened? Because God already had this promise to him, so what if Lot would have chose the other one? But you know what? I think God knew Lot's heart. Yeah. He knew that his favor was not going to be going toward Abraham. He may have harbored some kind of jealousy because Abraham was richer than he was. But anyway, we know that everywhere he looked, the land of Canaan, God was going to give this to Abraham's seed. In the next chapter, I'm not even going to begin to pronounce the names of these kings or where they're from. Mm-hmm. But they began to come to war. Mm-hmm. And these kings, there's about 5 of them or 4 of them, came against Sodom, Gomorrah, and some of the lands, the little kingdoms around there. I guess every little city had a king, like we had on there, I don't know. Anyway, they were coming against these guys to war, to make them captive. And guess where Lot's at? Mm-hmm. He's a very visible target, because he's right there by Sodom. So they take him too, because they were defeated. A man escaped, and he went back and he told Abraham, he says, it's Abram now, but y'all know who I'm talking about, that they had been taken captive. And Abram took 318 of his trained soldiers. Now, if you can think about that, these are soldiers. These are not servants. These are not children. These are just warriors. 318. So that can kind of give you an idea how big this was. Right. Their camp was. And they went out, and I told you last Sunday, I think Abraham was a very smart man, very wise. And he went in it in the night, and he set up an ambush. He separated himself, and they came in, and they defeated this one king. It starts with the C. That's as far as I'm going to get. And destroyed them, and he brought all of the goods back from this king that they had defeated. While I'm here, I want you to notice back in chapter, I think it's 13. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. We have to watch where we pitch our tent.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
When we get to the point to where we think we can be next door neighbors with the world and the devil's crowd, we've made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
If we think that we're so strong that we can step outside the ark of God's safety and play around in the world, you'll play out there without getting a little dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible says he's coming after a people without spot or wrinkle.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And Satan, one of my thoughts was, you don't get too close to Satan because he'll burn your tent down.
Right.
And he will.
Right.
How else can he get you to move in with him?
Mm-hmm.
And I can just hear them now telling me, this is after they've been brought back from captivity. I can just hear the men of Sodom saying, hey, look, come on. We feel better when you're inside our city.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that you're a righteous man and that Abraham is your uncle and he'll protect you. So we feel better with you in our crowd. Just come on in. You don't have to do the things we do.
Right.
You can be the designated driver.
Right. Yeah.
Just come on in, be with us. And probably Lot's wife, knowing probably the personality she had, she may have even said, well, Lot, it'll be easier to shop if we move inside the city.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And so what happens?
Mm-hmm.
You get too close to the world,
Right.
pretty soon you're going to find yourself in it.
Right. True.
Now we have to be friendly. God expects us to be friendly with our fellow men. God expects us to love them.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't get too far from God to where they become all we abide with and where we abide with.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to talk way too fast again.
Yeah. That's good.
You know, I get through too soon. Okay, 15 and 1. In chapter 15, after these things, word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and exceeding great reward.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have we said that?
Amen.
And it's still ours too. He is our exceeding great reward. All of our struggles here on earth are going to seem so small when we get to see Jesus.
Amen.
Our reward. Well, Abraham has no children.
Right.
And he's beginning to kind of maybe worry about it and question. Well, he had I guess he was the chief of his house, you might say. And his name was Eleazar. Now, I like Eleazar. I think he was more than just taking care of Abraham's house. I think he was a very good friend. Enough that Abraham said, well, you know, I don't have any children. So since you promised me all of these, maybe, I guess my inheritance may go to Eleazar.
Right.
God said, no, it will not go to Eleazar. It will come through you.
Right.
And then he goes into the next scriptures and tells about how Abraham's seed will be taken into captivity in time to come and be in captivity for 40 years. God's showing Abraham this already, and it hasn't happened. He doesn't have a son yet. But God is showing him this already. And he was telling them all of the countries that his seed, his children, his inheritance, all of the countries they were going to defeat and where they were going to live in this land of promise. Okay, so he has no children. Sarah, his wife, comes up with a plan. Now Sarah, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in to my maid, that it may be that I may obtain children by her. Which was the thing to do in that time, not God's thing, but that was customary in those times, that your handmaiden or your maid or your servant, whatever, could become the wife of the master, and her children would then become your children.
Mm-hmm.
Only here, when Hagar became pregnant, she got kind of insolent, a little cranky. She didn't want to do everything that Sarah told her to do, and it made Sarah angry. So now it's Abraham's fault. Because she goes to Abram and she said, Abram, my wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. And the Lord judged between me and thee. So now it's your fault. What do you do about it? Abram says, But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarah dwelt harshly with her, she fled from her face. I told you Abraham was a smart man. He knew how to answer that one. Do what you want to do. She could not sell Hagar because it was unlawful for the situation that she was in. She couldn't sell Hagar. But there was no law that prevented her from dealing harshly with her, laying impossible tasks upon her, being mean to her. Maybe not hitting or anything like that, but just being, you know how it is sometimes when people can just be so hateful that you just can't, you don't want to be around them anymore. And I think this is the way that she treated Hagar, to the point that Hagar fled from her. And she went and she sat under a fountain. And the angel of the Lord came to her and he said, Hagar, where are you from? Where are you going? And Hagar said, I flee from my mistress's presence. And the angel of the Lord told her to go back to Sarah and submit herself. That had to have been hard. Maybe as she sat there, she realized she didn't have another choice. Where was she going?
Right.
All alone. And carrying a child.
Right.
Maybe that was really for her best interest to go back and submit to Sarah. At least she had food.
Right.
And God told her then that Ishmael would be born to her, a male son would be born, his name would be Ishmael. And that his hand would be against everyone and everybody's hand against him. Now we're going to find out in a couple of scriptures what happened to Ishmael. And I can tell you now, maybe there was a reason he was against everybody and everybody was against him. We'll get there in a minute. Because I believe that what happens to a child grows up with that child. I had 2 sets of notes, and I could hardly deal with one. Okay, in chapter 7, I told myself, just go by the Bible and I'll be all right. Okay. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abraham. We find that in chapter 17, Abraham is about 90 years old, 99 years old, and the Lord appeared to Abraham and said to him, I am the Almighty God, walk before me and be thou perfect. He changed his name in this chapter from Abraham. Now I can say their name right, because he changed his name from Abram to Abraham.
Right.
And he changed Sarai's name to Sarah, so now I can say their names right. And he again tells him the covenant that he makes, and the covenant is to be the males to be circumcised. And he goes on and he's telling Abraham all that he's going to do for him through his seed and Sarah, not Hagar. Now, if you know the story, and we're going to get into that, you'll know what happened to Ishmael. But it says here, if you think Abraham didn't love Ishmael, here's in verse 18 it says, and Abraham said unto God, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. He loved Ishmael. That was his son, his only son. And he loved Ishmael. But yet God is telling him that it's not going to be Ishmael that's going to inherit the land. It's going to be another son. And this hurts Abraham because he loves him. And you know yourself with your children, you want the best for them. And he's worried about Ishmael. But God in the next scriptures tells Abraham that Ishmael is going to be okay. He's going to be the father. He's going to be the father of 12 princes. So he's going to be okay. I don't think that really took all the sting away. But at least it gives some comfort to know that God's going to take care of his son. I did study so hard. I think I studied too much. In chapter 18, we go to where Abraham is sitting in the tent in the heat of the day. He's resting. It's too hot to get out and go to work, kind of like it is here.
Yeah.
Stay out there a few minutes. You got to go inside. And 3 visitors come along. And Abraham's all excited. He jumps up and he runs to meet them. And he says, here, sit down underneath this tree. And I'm going to go get some bread and butter, and I'm going to fix a big dinner for you. And they said, okay, that would be nice. So they sat there, and he ran and got butter and bread, and he went and got food for them to eat. I guess a cow, pepper, I don't know. And had it cooked and brought before them, and they ate. And there's a portion of scriptures here that I'm going to read you. Well, first let me tell you that here is where the Lord told Abraham that Sarah was going. He asked first, where is Sarah? And Abraham said, well, she's in the tent. And he said, well, as the time of, well, let me read it. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard this in the tent, and she laughed. She was well up in age, and she laughed. And God said, why did you laugh? And she said, well, I didn't laugh. But she was afraid. That's why she laughed. And here is where I want to, as they are getting ready to go, Abraham followed, like you do, you follow your company out to the door. Well, Abraham was following along to show them on their way. And it was still the 3 of them. And God told, this is where God said, and this is a great compliment to Abraham, I believe. And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know, this is great, for I know that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the ways of the Lord and do justice and judgment, and the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken to him. What a compliment. He knew Abraham was going to take care of his house and his household and teach them right. I pray, I would that God would say that about me, but I have fallen too many times, with my children. But that was a good compliment there that he gave to Abraham. And now the 2 men are going to depart and go to Sodom and Gomorrah because the evil was so great there that it stunk in heaven. And only the Lord and Abraham were left here. And this is where Abraham begins to bargain with God. Well, if they're just 50 there, are you still going to destroy them? And he said, no, not for 50. Okay, perhaps 45. Not for 45. 40. And he comes all the way down to 10. And he wouldn't even have destroyed it for 10. But there wasn't 10.
Right.
4. Only 4. And one of them turned their back and turned to a pillar of salt for life. That's all that was left. Think about all, we read earlier that Lot had cattle and land and servants. He was a rich man on his own. What did he leave Sodom with? nothing.
Right.
The world takes everything. And obviously, Lot had gotten mixed up in the city as well because he was sitting on the outskirts. But he still knew right from wrong. Okay, the next scriptures we get into is the set of scriptures that I thought I lost. Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelt between Kadesh and Sur and sojourned in Yer. Now they had a king there named Amalek. I think that's how you say his name. And once again, Abram says, now you tell these guys that I'm your brother. Now when I tell you that she was a rare beauty, she's in her 80s.
Yeah.
She's an older woman, and she still has a rare beauty. So that now he has to claim her as a sister again. And Amalek took her into his house, and once again, God sent a plague. And once again, they have to figure out what the problem is. And Abraham, and they figure out that it's Sarah. So this time, Amalek brings Abraham into his courts and wants to know why. Why? Why have you done this?
Right.
And Abraham said, well, I didn't know that you was a righteous man. I thought you might kill me for my wife. But it seems here that Amalek was thinking a whole lot more clearly than Abraham was. And he was kind of rough with them there. He said he gave Abraham 1,000 shekels of silver. And my commentary says that was so Abraham would buy a veil to put over Sarah's face, that no other man could covet her because of her beauty, and God have God to chasten them or plague them the way he had these people. And so Amalek was pretty rough with Sarah and Abraham, and this time, instead of getting servants and cattle to take Sarah, this time this king gave them cattle and silver and gold to leave. He wanted them out of there. He didn't want to have any part of that. In chapters 21, God visited, and the Lord visited Sarah and said unto her, and the Lord did as to Sarah as he had spoken. Sarah conceived a child. His name was Isaac. They were thrilled. They had a little boy. Now that Abraham has 2 sons. After he was weaned, Abraham threw a great feast. And while they were going into this feast, Sarah saw Ishmael mocking Isaac. And her mother's indignation rose. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had born to Abraham, mocking. Wherefore she said unto Abram, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. How harsh. Abraham loved Ishmael. You would have hoped that by now even Sarah would have become somewhat attached to the boy. He was around all the time. He was Abraham's son. But she was not. She wanted all the inheritance to go to Isaac, which he would have anyway. And though we feel like this is very harsh and hurtful to Abraham, I'm quite sure. I hate it when my kids will leave home to get married. Thought I've lost them. How much worse did he feel? But God was okay with that. He told Abraham to go ahead and do what Sarah had said to do. Because he knew the future. He knows our futures. And he knows what is coming our way. And he knew here that if this had begun here, it was only going to get worse. God has a plan. And though this must have hurt Abraham immensely, God told him to go ahead and do what Sarah had said. And Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael off. And now he had to set her free, because that was the law whenever you set a bond like this, they had to be free, and she did go. And we know that God did take care of Ishmael. And remember back there when I said that he was against every man and every man was against him? Perhaps he just felt cheated himself. Perhaps Ishmael had issues within his own heart. You know, my father doesn't want me. My stepmother doesn't want me. You know, maybe he had these issues as why he was against everyone. And you know, when you go against someone, everybody goes against you. And he maybe had that personality. And then we find, we're moving into the next chapter, that Isaac, as he began to grow, God put Abraham to the test. How many like to be tested by God?
Yeah, no.
It's not pleasant.
Right.
We grow from it, but it's not pleasant.
Right.
And we find that God told Abraham that he wanted, I think I wanted to read some scriptures here. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee. So Abraham does it. He picks up Isaac and 3 men or several men, his young men, and they go traveling to the land that God had told them to go. And some of the commenters say that may have been even Mount Calvary. I don't know. That's just what a commentator said. It was a high mountain. And whenever he got to that point, God showed him that that was the mountain where he wanted Isaac to be sacrificed on. So he left the young men down in the camp, and he and Isaac alone went up. And it says Abraham took the fire, and he put the logs and the wood upon Isaac to carry up. And on the way up, Isaac asked him, where's the sacrifice? And what did he say? God will provide. And I guess Isaac was just, okay. And then when they got there, we find that Abraham bound Isaac and laid him on an altar. And I've thought about this lots of times. I wonder how Isaac took all this. Did he squirm and fight? Personally, I don't think so. I think he was a very obedient son. I think he trusted his father, just as Abraham was trusting his father. For one thing, Abraham knew God did not approve of killing children.
Right.
Okay? So there was hope, number one. Number two, he knew the promises of God, and he believed that these promises were going to come to pass. That was number two. With these two, Abraham knew one way or the other Isaac was going to be okay. He just had to submit himself to God. Just like us, we've got to submit ourselves to God. And it's going to be okay. Whatever he throws our way, it's going to be okay. And we find that just as and I think that he was just fixing to come down. I don't think God, he didn't show him that, because the Bible says he was coming down with that knife. He had to make sure Abraham was going to do it. Going to plunge that knife. And then he called him Abraham. And he looked over in the thicket, and there was a ram. And I think about that, and I think, Isaac might not want to go sacrificing with his daddy anymore. But I don't think so. I think that proved to Isaac right then and there the God that his father served, and you could trust him. I think in the next scripture, I want to get on into something else here. And Sarah was at 107 and 20 years, 127, and she died. And he buried her in Machpelah before Mamre. or Hebron in the land of Canaan. So he did bury his wife in the land of Canaan, where he later came back and was buried himself. So this was the life of Sarah. And Abraham, it says in chapter 23 and 27, 25 and 7, and these are the days of the years of Abraham's life, which he lived, and 115 years. In other words, he lived 175 years, and then he died. Now, he had made Eleazar. Remember, I told you I liked Eleazar. I really thought he was a pretty good servant. He had made Eleazar make a promise to him that he would not let Isaac marry any of the Canaanite women. So he asked Eleazar to go back to Nahor's house, way back there, and find a wife for Isaac. And Eleazar was very faithful, and it was a long distance. And he prayed when he got there to the well there that God, the right woman, would come along for Isaac. He is asking God to honor his master Abraham. I remember when my son and daughter-in-law were living in Daytown, she prayed so hard for my son. And a lot of times I would just say, God, honor my daughter-in-law's prayer. Because she has such a burden. And I think this is where Eleazar is here. Honor your servant Abraham. And of course, he didn't have to sit there and wait all day.
Right.
God was right there with the answer. Here comes along this beautiful, and she was beautiful too. She must have run in the family. She comes along, and very first one, she's going to give him water, and she's going to give them camels water. Camels, they drink a lot. She was willing to go that extra mile. And that was the woman that Eleazar said, send me the woman that will give me to drink and also my camels. God answered, right. Sometimes he answered just like that. Sometimes you got to wait a while. And sometimes he says no. And we still beg him. He still says no. But he's got it all planned out. And so Isaac did, and Isaac loved Rebekah. Through him, we get Jacob. From Jacob, we get the 12 sons, the tribe of Israel. This is where Israel is beginning to shape up, right here with Jacob, the 12 sons. We know the story, how they, remember whenever I told you that God told Abraham that they was going to be taken into captivity? Well, the son that the brothers were jealous of and sold went to Egypt and was thrown in prison there and interpreted dreams, and this got to the Pharaoh, and Pharaoh called him in and he interpreted the dream about the severe famine. And so Pharaoh made him second in the house. That's mine. And so they might even come to work today. And lost my train of thought. So whenever the severe famine hit, Jacob sent his sons into Egypt to get food. And we know through all the process that the Israelites were then transported back into Egypt just so that they could live. And the Pharaoh at that time gave them the best land, the land of Goshen, the best land that they in Egypt. And then as time went on, these pharaohs that knew Joseph died. So the ones coming up didn't know Joseph. And Israelites were getting strong. They were getting to be a large nation. And they became fearful. So the Pharaoh said, now you midwives, when you go in to help birth these Israelite women, kill their male babies. Well, the midwives feared the Israelites' God too. They didn't do it. When Pharaoh called them in, she said, well, they're not like the Egyptian woman, because by the time we get there, they've already had the child. So they couldn't kill it. God favored these women for protecting. The Bible says that he gave them favor because they did not destroy these babies. But then he said, all right, I want all the male babies thrown into the river. Well, there was a man named Moses. If I can, I'm going to try to get y'all through the promised land. A man named Moses. His mother's name was Jochebed, I believe. And she didn't want to kill her baby. So when he got to where she couldn't hide him anymore, she put him in a little basket and put him in the river and sent Miriam, his sister, to watch out for him. So when the Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe, she saw this basket with this little baby in it, and she brought it up to her, and of course Miriam hops up and says, I'll take it to an Israelite woman to be nursed if you like. So Pharaoh's daughter said, okay, that would be a good thing. Well, so who does Miriam take him back to?
No.
His own mother. And she nursed him, and she got paid for it. When he got a little older, he moved into Pharaoh. And I'll bet you anything, while he was at Mama's house, he was learning all about his heritage. He was learning all about Abraham and what was coming for the children of Israel. And after a while, he was going out to see the affairs of the land, and he saw an Egyptian spite an Israeli. And he got angry, and he spoke the Egyptian, killed him, buried him in sand. The next day, he's out surveying the land again, and he sees two Israelites fighting. And he comes to them and says, why are y'all fighting? And they said, well, who do you think you are? A prince or something? Are you going to kill us like you did the Egyptian? Abraham knew he'd been caught. Moses knew he'd been caught. And he took off and he fled to the land of Midian. And there he married a girl named Zipporah. And he took care of the sheep, the flock, for his father-in-law, Jethro. I think Jethro liked Moses better than Zipporah did. But we find that as Abraham is tending to the sheep, that he turns and sees a burning bush. And he said, well, I'm going to see what's going on here. Well, God spoke to him and told him to take the shoes off of his feet, for the ground he was standing on was holy. And this is where God told Moses, I want you to lead the children of Israel out of captivity, out of Egypt. And Moses had every excuse under the sun not to do it. But God kept being insistent. Finally, he said, okay, Moses, just take Aaron, your brother, and he will be your mouthpiece. And we know that he went back to Egypt, and through all the plagues, he was able to lead the children of Israel out of captivity after 40 years, like God told Abraham. After 40 years, he was able to get those children of Israel out of the captivity of Egypt. The last plague being the death of every firstborn son in the household. Now, you think about that. Some women lost their husband, their father, their son, their grandsons. Only those who were saved were those that had the blood of an animal splashed over their doorposts. They were saved. And here we find that they're out of Egypt now, and Pharaoh said they could leave, and now Pharaoh has changed his mind again, and they got the Red Sea in front of them, and they got the Pharaoh behind them. What are they going to do? God said, stretch forth your hand. And the waters rolled back, and they walked across on dry land. I don't think for 1 minute it was muddy.
Right.
I think it was dry ground.
Right.
And so Pharaoh says, well, they did it, I can do it too. And he comes across, and we know that God let the waters roll back, and they were destroyed. Now they are in the land of, they're right there on the border of the land of Canaan. Right there. And he sent 12 spies out to see the land. They come back. They have big clusters of grapes on their shoulders. They're saying it's a land filled with milk and honey. Great land. But we are as grasshoppers in their sight. There's no way we can defeat these people. They are too big for us. Too many. We can't do it. Only 2 men, Joshua and Caleb, said, they were ready to go. God's with us. We can take this land. Come on. Well, because they did not believe, God said, all the older people are not going to enter into the land of Canaan. You're going to wander around in this wilderness 1 year for every day the Israelites, the spies were in the land. That's 40 years, because they were gone 40 days. 40 years they wandered around in the desert when they were so close. Even Moses could not, because he angered God when God told him they were needing water, and he told him to stretch his rod over the rock, but he didn't do it. He smote it twice. And then he said, what, must Aaron and I come and give drink as well. He was more or less taking the credit for it. I don't think he was taking the credit for it. He was just angry at their murmuring because they murmured and complained all the time, kind of like we do a lot. And, you know, we can't say we're better than they are because we got this Bible. They didn't have it.
Right.
So we can say they were the bad guys, but we do the same thing sometimes. And anyway, they even Moses was not able to enter into the land of Canaan. But he did, God took him on the mountain and did show him all the land. He got to see the land. And God buried him. And I kind of think God buried him in Canaan. In the land of Canaan. I think so. Anyway, we find that, and I'm taking this to a close here, we find that when Moses died, he told Moses to hand down the leadership to a man named Joshua. Everybody knows the statement that Joshua made, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And I want to go real quickly over there if I can. It's because I thought it was so important. And I don't know where the scripture is exactly, but somewhere in here it says that they had not gone that way before. They've been wandering around in the desert. God is fixing to take them into the land of Canaan, and they've not been that way before. And somehow that struck me when I read that. You know, we may be going into a time in our lives where we haven't gone before. Most of us are in this room today. During our lifetimes, it's been a good thing to be a Christian. We've not been persecuted. People go to church. You know, it's fine to be a Christian. That's a good thing. But you know, the time may come when it's no longer popular. And we've not been that way before. And we have to stay close to God, that He will guide, lead us through those times that we testing we may be going through. And one other scripture that I wanted to touch on here that is also in Joshua, because at this point they have come to the river Jordan, crossing over into the land of Canaan, just as God had promised Abraham all those years before. Now it's coming to pass. The children of Israel are fixing to cross over into the promised land. And let me find it here, because it's a scripture that I think we need to all take to heart. It's whenever they were crossing the Jordan River, it was a time that the river was flooding its banks. And it says, and it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand in a heap. In other words, He brought the waters up in a heap. And the children of Israel, with the Ark of the Covenant in the middle of it, they crossed over the Jordan River into the Canaan land on dry ground. Now, they told them, Joshua told them, when you come through there, every man, every leader of every tribe, pick up a stone and carry it to the other side. And as soon as the priest with the ark stepped out of that river on dry land in Canaan, the waters came and overflowed its banks once again. Now, and here's why He wanted the stones. That this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What mean ye by these stones? Ye shall answer them that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord when it passed over Jordan. The waters of these stones shall be for a memorial to the children of Israel forever. Boy, do we need desperately to tell our children, to tell their children, the things of God. Make God a memorial of your life. You know, that's the only way that they're going to be able to stand in times to come. If we remind them of the good things that God did for us and teach them in the ways of the Lord. Thank you for your teaching.
Mhm.
Let's have a word of prayer.
Mhm.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for these words that you've given us today. Lord, we know that your word does not go out
Yes,
void,
Lord, thank you.
that God, there is a seed planted somewhere. We pray to God that as we go into this next part of the service, that you'll anoint everything that's done and every word that's said. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.